Somewhere right now, someone is kissing someone else, and neither of them is thinking about it as strange. It just feels like the obvious thing to do when you're close to someone you love. But step back for a second and it stops making sense. You're pressing your face against another person's face, exchanging bacteria, getting close enough to taste what they had for lunch. In almost any other context, this would be considered an invasion of personal space. Between romantic partners, it's considered the opposite, a sign of trust, even affection. So what's actually going on here? Why did humans land on this specifically as a gesture of love? The easy answer is that it's just instinct, something built into us, like blinking or flinching. But instinct is supposed to be consistent, and when you look at kissing across the world, it isn't. Anthropologist William Jankowiak ran one of the most cited surveys on this question, looking at 168 societies to see how many practiced romantic kissing, not greeting kisses, not family affection, but mouth-to-mouth contact tied to attraction. He expected near universal results. Instead, fewer than half showed any evidence of it. Some cultures documented in the study had never developed a kissing tradition at all, and a few, when first exposed to the practice through outside contact, reacted with confusion or open disgust rather than recognition. That's not what you'd expect from a hardwired reflex. Reflexes don't need to be explained to people the first time they see them. So if kissing isn't a universal instinct, it has to be something else. A behavior that got invented somewhere and then spread. Which means the real question isn't why do humans kiss? It's where did this specific behavior come from and why did it stick? One of the leading answers starts somewhere you wouldn't expect. Feeding infants. Long before store-bought baby food existed, many cultures fed infants through pre-mastication, a caregiver chewing food to soften it, then passing it directly into the baby's mouth. This wasn't rare or exotic. It shows up across dozens of documented cultures, and researchers like Von Bryant have argued it was likely standard practice for most of human history, simply because there wasn't another reliable option before a child could chew solid food. Think about what that experience actually is from the infant's side. Close mouth contact with a trusted adult, delivering something essential for survival, wrapped in comfort and closeness. That combination, mouth contact meaning safety and care, gets imprinted early, during the period when the brain is doing its most foundational wiring. The theory goes that romantic kissing didn't appear out of nowhere. It's a repurposed version of that early bonding mechanism, pulled from infancy into adult relationships, and rebuilt around intimacy instead of nutrition. If that's true, every kiss between adults is, in some strange sense, echoing a survival behavior that originally had nothing to do with romance at all. That's the evolutionary layer. But there's a second layer, and it's physical. Your lips are absurdly over-equipped with nerve endings relative to their size. Neuroscientists map this using something called the cortical homunculus, a way of representing how much of your brain's sensory processing is dedicated to different body parts. Lips take up a strikingly large share of that map, far out of proportion to their actual surface area, similar to your fingertips and tongue. Practically, that means your brain treats input from your lips as unusually high-priority information. A kiss isn't a subtle sensory event. It's one of the loudest signals your skin can send, and that signal doesn't stay just physical, it changes your chemistry. Researchers studying kissing between romantic partners have found measurable shifts. Oxytocin, associated with bonding and trust, tends to rise. Cortisol, a stress hormone, tends to fall. Some studies have also linked kissing to short-term changes in dopamine, the chemical tied to motivation and reward. Put plainly, kissing is a mechanism. In the space of a few seconds, it can lower stress, increase feelings of trust, and activate the brain's reward system, all through contact with a few square centimeters of skin. That's a lot of biological infrastructure for something that, on paper, serves no direct survival purpose, which leads to a stranger possibility. Maybe kissing isn't primarily about affection at all. Maybe it's about evaluation. Some evolutionary psychologists have proposed that kissing functions, at least partly, as a mate assessment tool, a way of gathering extremely close-range biological information about a potential partner. Taste, breath, scent, signals your conscious mind never registers, but that other systems in your body might be quietly processing. One theory centers on immune compatibility. Humans carry MHC genes, which play a role in immune function, and there's research, including work by biologist Klaus Wedekind, suggesting people can unconsciously detect MHC differences through scent and tend to be more drawn to partners whose immune profiles differ from their own. The evolutionary logic is straightforward. More genetically diverse immune systems and offspring tend to be healthier. Under this theory, a kiss might work like an unconscious compatibility check. You're not deliberately assessing anyone's genetics, but something underneath the romance might be running that calculation anyway. There's an even more literal version of this idea, involving saliva itself. A widely cited 2013 study found that a single 10-second kiss can transfer roughly 80 million bacteria between two people. On its own, that's mostly just unsettling, but some researchers have floated a more interesting possibility that repeated exposure to a partner's microbiome over time might help calibrate immune tolerance between two people who are going to be sharing close physical space and potentially raising children for years to come. It's not settled science, but it's a legitimate hypothesis, not a fringe one. So now there are three explanations layered on top of each other: an evolutionary root in infant care, a hormonal system that rewires trust through touch, and a possible unconscious biological assessment happening every time two people kiss. None of them cancels the others out. They stack. And that stacking might explain the strangest fact in this whole story. Kissing isn't universal, but pair bonding is. If kissing were the essential mechanism behind human bonding, you'd expect every culture to have converged on it independently. Instead, cultures without any kissing tradition still fall in love, form lasting partnerships, and raise children together. They just do it without this particular ritual. That suggests kissing isn't a biological necessity so much as one specific cultural expression of needs that actually are universal: closeness, trust, and mate selection. The underlying drives are shared by everyone. The specific act of pressing your mouth against someone else's to express them is something certain cultures happen to invent, refine, and eventually export through trade, media, and cultural contact. Until it became so widespread, it started to feel like it had always existed everywhere. Jankowiak's research backs this up. In cultures with no kissing tradition, first contact with the practice was sometimes met with genuine confusion or even discomfort rather than instant recognition. There's nothing self-evidently obvious about wanting to touch mouths with another person. It had to be learned, normalized within a culture, and reinforced generation after generation until it stopped feeling like a choice at all. Which means every time you kiss someone, several unrelated systems are firing at once. Nerve pathways originally shaped by infant feeding, a hormonal cascade built for trust and bonding, possibly an unconscious chemical assessment your ancestors relied on to judge compatibility, and a specific cultural practice that, historically, less than half of human societies ever developed on their own. It feels completely natural. In a sense, it is. Every piece underneath it is ancient, built from systems that have been shaping human behavior for a very long time. But the kiss itself, as a specific act, isn't some universal instinct wired into our species since the beginning. It's something humans built, assembled from parts that originally had nothing to do with romance, refined over generations, until it looked like it had been there from the start.